are back. You're listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and things might be a little different. Okay, first of all, you're not used to seeing me on video. I'm here. Hello. I have a webcam. Zoom is great. I guess we're trying it. Second of all, I'm not joined by Mike Sr. today. We are joined by a very special guest, and it is the one, the only, Mr. Jason Myrtetus. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Good. We're honored to be joined by a gentleman such as yourself. You've been, for me, the radio voice of the Flyers, kind of, for pretty much, a large portion of my life. And I don't mean to make you sound old when I say that, but.
Well, how old are you?
27.
Okay, yeah. So that kind of makes sense then.
Yeah,
so it doesn't make me feel old, but
I don't know exactly how long you've been there, but it seems like I've heard your voice 3 times a week pretty much my entire life.
Yeah, I think I've been there I've done 13 seasons. So
okay, so almost exactly half my life. There we go.
I'm hoping that 13. I was hoping 13 was going to be like the lucky season, but
it certainly seemed that way, didn't it?
For that to happen.
Didn't it seem that way?
God, they're fun.
I don't know if you're like me, but mid to late October, once I saw that that Elaine Vigneault thing started to work, something just clicked for me, and the team reminded me all of a sudden of 2010, but with more talent.
Yeah, well, 2010 was weird because, they fired John Stevens in December. I think it was December 8th, 2010, or 2009. They fired him, and they brought Lavi in, and it didn't turn around right away. And there were points in that season, even with Lavi, where they were not good at all.
I think they went 2-8 in their first 10 under Lavi, something insane like that. They were
6
bad.
Start.
It was 0-6, right?
Yeah. And then, they started to grab hold a little bit in February and in March, and then they kind of skidded again at the end. A couple opportunities kind of ensure the playoff spot, and then, that final weekend.
They really had to fight for it. Yeah.
Yeah. The home and home with the Rangers, and then, obviously the shootout, and Bush makes the save. And I had him on my Stick to Hockey podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about, kind of where he was mentally. And he goes, 10 minutes to go in the third period, I was scared shitless because I knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
Because they were, the best team in the shootout the entire year. Lundqvist was the best goalie in the world at the shootout.
He might have been the best goalie in the world, period.
Yeah, probably absolute prime, right?
He's definitely in the running.
And and the Flyers stunk in the shootout. So Bush is going, geez, I got to deal with this. That's all
they're doing
to get in, and it was funny because the celebration that Bush did with the blocker, was
absolutely mimicked by Carter Hart recently.
Yeah, that was actually not a shot, but it was Lundqvist's move.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a jab. Absolutely, a little bit. All right, I see you. All right, Hank.
But Bush was mad because he slipped out of the blocks and ruined the celly. Because he kind of slipped trying to do it, but still, it was wild. They made that. He makes the save that they go into the playoffs. It kind of matched up perfect, and I was with the team and traveled with them for that entire playoff, and it was crazy. From what happened in New Jersey with Lappy catching one in the face in that game there, trying to block a shot. To heading to Boston, and we all know what happened there, down of 0-3 coming back.
The most insane series I've seen in my lifetime.
It was incredible.
So
many guys stepped up in games, whether it was Briere or Gagne with an overtime winner, and then obviously Gagne with the game winner in Game 7, and then off to Montreal, and in Montreal at the Bell Center in the first game there, Game 3, all the the locker rooms are across the ice in Montreal from the bench. And Montreal's always getting accused of doing all kinds of weird things to the opposition.
No, never. No.
Players kept coming off the ice with skate issues across the ice. And I'm standing in the tunnel. I think it was with Johan Backlund was actually the backup for that series.
Wow.
So many guys were hurting late.
Times were tough.
Yeah, and they kept having skate issues, and we finally figured it out. There was sand on the floor.
Wow.
And so they were skating on it.
They were just gritting up the blades. Yeah.
So we had to lay paper down on all, me and a bunch of the other guys on the staff were laying paper down so the players didn't walk on the floor because there was sand on the floor.
And that was obviously an accident by the Bell Center team, right? That could never be on purpose or anything. No.
Well, they were trying to make their locker room like a beach.
Right. Well, and it's funny that we started on this 2010 series because One of the reasons we had you on is because you showed some interest in the bracket we're running over on our Twitter. Over at YWT Podcast on Twitter, we're doing a bracket of the most memorable Flyers game of all time. And we talked about the verbiage there for a little bit. The best, the greatest, the most important. We settled on most memorable because it's hard to pick an exact path we wanted to go down, and memorable is kind of where we wanted to be. But you showed some interest in that bracket, and one of the games that's actually the live matchup as we talk now includes that 2010 Game 5 against Montreal, and that's the game that clinches to go to the Cup. You mentioned beforehand that's Mike Richards, the shift.
Yeah,
that's Jeff Carter into the empty net.
We're going to the Cup.
Right. It's not the best technical hockey game of the run, but awesome. It's the one that cements. It's the last big moment of, oh my God, we're going to the Cup.
Yeah.
And I was actually there way up in the nosebleeds, and man, they say there's not a bad seat in that building, and I was in the quote unquote worst seat. I wouldn't trade it for the world. That was the most electric atmosphere I've ever seen in the Wells Fargo Center.
Yeah, it was awesome because, they have the first two games at home and they take them both, and they go into Montreal, they lose game 3, they come back and they played really well in game 4. And then in that game 5, with a chance to go to the Cup, to wrap it up at home. And, you remember that playoff, that Halak was unbelievable.
It was incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, I mean, that's how, as an 8 seed, they get by Washington, and but the Flyers solved them, and it was crazy. And I remember, is Richie going to pick up the trophy? He grabbed, he grabbed the conference trophy and just grabbed it and brought it right over the bench and then got down to business.
Because the Penguins had grabbed it the year before. I remember them mentioning on the broadcast that the Penguins had grabbed it the year before, and then they won the Cup. So for a while, there was that weird tradition where East Coast was grabbing it, Western Conference wasn't, and they were kind of going back and forth for a couple of years.
It was like a
trading
Biggie
cups.
Tupac feud.
It was a little bit. And we had some of that, and, Richard grabbed it, and obviously it didn't really work out. But I remember for a couple years there was a big story over, do they touch the conference championship trophy?
Yeah. It was an awesome moment. It's one of the greatest moments in my broadcasting of the games. It was so much fun. Because the other thing too is that group was so much fun. And where I work, the Flyers bench is in one area, then the tunnel goes back, and then right under the bleachers, there's a door to the right and a door to the left. I work in the door to the right. It's called NBA 1. It's the NBA visiting locker room. And so I'm right there where they line up, to go out for each period. And you could just feel the intensity and just the conversation, and when they would line up to go out for either warm-ups or the next period and everything. And there were so many, surprises in those, but like Billy Leno was a huge surprise in those playoffs, So it was so much fun, and to go to the Cup, and, Mr. Snyder was still alive, and it was just, it was electric, man.
If the Flyers pull that off, if the goal in Philly doesn't go in, if they win that game, if they win in Chicago, Danny Briere's got to be the Conn Smythe favorite at that point, right? Just the intense, insane playoff series he had. He just put up ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, and it wasn't just that they put up numbers. He put up, like, his goals were like the most important goals for the most part.
Every goal was clutch.
Yeah, and look, he's going to wear that as a badge the rest of his life, like,
as he very well should.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you have him on and you do an interview with him and you don't ask him why he was so clutch, then you failed your interview. Because some players in the biggest moments are better than they normally are. Some are worse. Some are just, that's what they are. But he was a really good player, period, in the sentence. But in the playoffs, he was a great player, a great
next
player.
Level.
Yeah. And he changed games, and you couldn't be happy because the guy, Danny Briere, is like one of, I say it all the time. People ask me, well, who's the players that you like dealing with the most or you had the best relationship with? And it's not even a question for me. It's Danny Briere.
Okay.
He's just such a nice guy. He's awesome on all levels.
Yeah, I've never had the chance to meet him, but I've been near him a couple times, and he just looks like he never looks unpleasant. He always looks like he's happy to be there and just having a good time.
Yeah,
but that
also the success is totally deserved.
Yeah, but turning a little bit back to the bracket, That game 5 matchup against Montreal is up against a pretty tough one. We're talking about 1987 game 3 against the Edmonton Oilers.
It's a big one. It's the first one in Philly in that series. And we know where that series went to 7. I remember the game in 87. It's obviously not as fresh as 2010.
Right.
See, to me, game 5 is more memorable, A, because of the recency, B, though, because it's what punched your ticket to the final. Game 3 put the Flyers in a series against Edmonton.
Right.
But game 5 against Montreal punched a ticket to the final.
It clinched it. Right.
Yeah, so I'd give that one the nod for sure.
Yeah, I don't feel too bad leaning on the scale a little bit for this one, because this one's going to be long over by the time the show goes up.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time the show goes up, it looks like the show's going to go up right around the start of round 2. But I do want to ask you real quick about your last round 1 matchup. The last round 1 matchup is going to be 2010 game 7 against Boston, which is game 7 completing the 3-0 comeback in 2010. And then the other game is January 20th, 2015 against Pittsburgh. We're looking at the bottom right of the bracket.
Yeah.
January 20th, 2015 against Pittsburgh. I don't know if you remember that game, but Zach Ronaldo runs Chris Letang, ends up getting himself suspended, kicked out. Then in the second period, you got 4 fights, including Michael Raffl, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare, Jake Voracek, and Luke Schenn. Just an overall, a really,
pummeled, by the way,
it was a great game. Everybody got pummeled. Like Jake Voracek won his fight, Michael Raffl won his fight, Pierre-Edouard Bellemare at least drew in his fight. It was a great game. That being said, it's not winning this one.
See you later. It's a 16 seed, I guess, or 15 seed.
Right. We're talking about the third time in history that a team has ever come back from 3-0 in the NHL, and it's a 2 versus 15 matchup, I believe.
Yeah, and that's Appalachian State getting in, winning their conference tournament into the field of 64.
That's exactly what it is, and it's a Pittsburgh Philly game, and it does a really good job of encapsulating kind of the Scott Hartnell era rivalry.
Yep.
Game 7 against Boston.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's game 7 against Boston all day.
I don't know if you've ever seen, but on YouTube there exists a supercut of that game of Jack Edwards.
Oh God!
And
how eclectic was that guy?
Man, it's fun to hear him. It's fun to hear his heartbreak. And I know that sounds mean-spirited a little bit, but if you dish it out, you got to take it. Nobody's dished it more than Jack Edwards.
Oh yeah, and then look, he's one of those mass holes.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, I respect that.
Yeah. Hey, he is who he is.
If I rooted for that team, I would die for Jack Edwards.
Yeah.
Like that's how it works.
Yeah, you want your guy to be a homer.
Just like we would all die for Merrill Reese.
Well, some of us, yeah.
For the most part. You can't deny that he's one of the best in history. Come on.
I can't, but okay. That's a whole other story.
Well, okay.
Look, I just like the guy that's calling the game to be calling what's happening on the field. But
that's fair to say. And you know what? Jack Edwards is just as guilty of that as anybody. They go off on tangents, and he talks about, Roman Polak getting hockey karma when he's laying on the ice. Yeah. So Jack Edwards crosses the line sometimes, but
big time.
Again, if he was your guy, you'd probably love him.
Yeah, no doubt.
But moving on, was there anything in this first round of the bracket that surprised you? Anything that slipped through that you thought, maybe didn't deserve to, or caught you by surprise here?
Yeah, the 2019 Stadium Series beating the 0-4 Game 6 against Toronto.
Okay.
That's the Roenick goal in overtime.
Yeah.
That's Sammy Kapanen getting fished back to the bench.
Yep.
And one is obviously a playoff game and a game to move on in a series, and against Toronto to boot. The Stadium Series is awesome, and it was outdoors. It wasn't a particularly good hockey game.
Okay.
None of the outdoor games are particularly good hockey games.
Especially that one with the rain and the ice was in poor condition. It was bad.
The ice was good for one period. It was the second. Beyond that, it was terrible. It was like
pretty bad. Yeah,
skating on 100 grit sandpaper.
They said it was like curling ice with the pebble, almost the pebbly surface.
Yep, absolutely.
Because the raindrops were just freezing.
Yeah, and I was right on the glass for that. I've worked all those outdoor games, and as a matter of fact, I'm in the corner, right on the goal line. So when Jake Voracek scores that tying
You were
goal,
there?
I'm sitting on a stool in that corner, literally right behind him along that goal line. So I'm watching that puck off
You
the
see it on
inside
his
line.
angle. Wow.
Yeah.
He's looking
Um,
straight down his stick. That's awesome.
yeah, I mean, it happens right in front of me. So if you watch that video, you'll see just a head with a winter cap and a big beard in the corner. That's yours truly. So yeah, I mean, I didn't get a good look at the Giroux goal live because I'm in that corner and it was at the other end. But it was awesome, and the Stadium Series was great. It was Pittsburgh, and everything around the Stadium Series was great. But I have to value playoff games more. I have to value playoff games against Toronto more, and I have to value playoff games where you eliminate a team more in overtime, especially. So I would have gone Toronto there for that game in particular. The brawl versus Ottawa, I get why that got past Hexie's first goal.
It's there for the penalty minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
both games are moment games, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the first 45, 50 minutes of that Ottawa game was a good game. It was physical. It was fine. But that's not, otherwise it's a normal regular season game in 2004. But
Yeah.
that the Hexie goal, same thing. It's a normal regular season game in December of 1987. Both games are kind of defined by something that happened in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So brawl versus goal, history
I,
versus history.
I see one here too that I'm a little surprised at too, and I get like the fall of communism. It was the Red Army game versus the 1-0
game after Pelly.
Yeah, Darren Jensen shutout, and I was in the building for that game in 1985 on November 14th after Pelly died. So I would have voted that for that reason, but also because I don't know if people maybe in your voting, like a lot of people didn't realize exactly how good Pelly was. At that point in the season, I think the Flyers lost one game that at November 14th, or two games maybe. And he had one loss. I think he was like 10-1. And he wasn't a good goalie. He was an elite goalie in the league at that time. And that was a team that was ticketed to go to the Cup and take on, and win the Cup. And we're going to be a really good team with the goalie. You had everything. I mean, Mark Howe, Talk, all those guys. And then for that to happen the way it happened in that game after, I mean, I was 13 at the time. And I think it was the first time in my life where I was shattered by something. Okay. I bawled my eyes out. I still have the articles somewhere in my house about Pelly and having to remove him from life support and all that stuff. And I've talked to Al Morgani about it on a number of occasions because a lot of those articles that I still have, he wrote.
Right.
He was very close. Yeah, I mean, he was basically the correspondent for the family to the media, and he was in the media because he was very close with Pelly. And as you can see, like behind me, I have that's actually a Bernie mask, but very similar to Pelly.
Right.
So I would have definitely voted for Pelly on that one. The Red Army game wasn't even a, it's an exhibition game.
Yeah, I think that one kind of gets through again on the gravitas, right?
I get it.
This big dominant Red Army team, and they haven't beat anybody, even though they kind of did, but whatever. Or nobody's beat them, even though teams kind of did. But whatever.
Well, then
but
they left the ice and wouldn't come back.
And that's the thing. It's there for the Ed Snyder story. It's there for get back on the ice so you're not getting paid. It's there for they're going home.
Yeah.
And that's honestly, that game is going to give 2010 against Chicago a run. Like I think Red Army might go Final Four. It's one of those big iconic moments in the franchise, especially among the that Broad Street Bullies era. And I think we've seen something. And you touched on it earlier with that Toronto upset. I think the average age of our Twitter voters is pushing this poll in a direction that I think some older school fans might not necessarily agree with.
Yeah, I thought that was a good match. Like the Red Army matchup with the Pelly game is a good matchup, though, because it's two older games.
Yeah.
So you don't have that disparity because so much of the audience is younger. Like a lot of the younger people, I don't know that really know about that game after. I mean, it's Gretzky coming in. It's Messier, Curry, Kevin Lowe for that Edmonton game. But everybody knows about that Red Army game.
Right.
But I think you're right, yeah. I don't think that people that attended the Red Army game are voting on Twitter a tremendous amount.
Right. And again, that one kind of goes down with the lore and the history and the story behind it rather than the actual X's and O's hockey.
Yeah. I mean, that was good versus evil.
Yeah, absolutely. It was Rocky 4. It's the same exact thing.
Yep.
Moving on to the other side, that shutout, the shootout against the Rangers to get in, coming over Ottawa, Lindros 7 points. Thoughts on that?
I mean, come on.
It's got to be 2010, right?
Yeah, it's the
8-9 matchup for a reason, but
yeah, both games.
One of them's a de facto playoff game.
7 points is, during this whole thing with the pandemic. The other day, I was sitting with my son watching YouTube videos of Lindros and going like, because my son plays 13, he plays, and I'm like, look at this guy, and he's seeing guys try to hit him, and he's like throwing him. I'm like, dude, he just threw that guy in like the 7th row when guys try to hit him. But yeah, the April, I mean, what a run that led to, the shootout versus the Rangers.
That's the trigger point for sure.
Yeah, but the Ottawa game, Lindros, I mean, jeez, he was such a freaking spectacle. And when he was on his game, and he was often on his game in his prime, like a game like that, he just dominated the ice. He dominated every aspect of the game. So
yeah, when he was off the ice, he was usually on his game. You're right.
Yep.
if he could stay off the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving on, are there any round 2 matchups that are starting to look kind of juicy to you? Like, I'm sitting here looking at the 2004 brawl versus Ottawa, going up against April 1st, 2012 in Pittsburgh. It's Peter Laviolette standing on the bench, yelling at Dan Bilesma while the boys fight on the ice.
That was a good one.
That's a good matchup head to head, right?
Yeah.
Brawl versus brawl, who you got?
Yeah, I think that the brawl versus Ottawa moves on.
It has to be, right?
Yeah, I think
the coaches didn't get involved, but everybody else did. Just everybody else.
Yeah, and Lavi was just so steamed, and God, he was awesome. I loved it. I loved when he was coaching the team. I'll tell the story real quick because we were talking about the Montreal series. And Lavi was the guy that was obviously very intense, like in that game with Bilesma. So the Flyers were in Montreal, and my setup in Montreal is that there's a hallway that goes down from the ice because, as I mentioned, the locker rooms are across the ice, and then it walks straight into a locker room, and which splits off into another locker room for the players. But before you go into that locker, there's a hallway that goes down to the right, and the coach's room is right down. The coach's office is right down there on the left. I'm literally set up in that hallway with my computer on a stool. I have a chair, and I'm like holding my microphone. So the Flyers win Game 4. And I'm there, and I'm on the air already, and I'm talking to about the post-game show, and he comes down that tunnel, makes the right, and is going past me and walks past me and just jacks me right in the ribs. I'm like, oh, you hear it on the air. I think I have it somewhere. And I turn around and look, and it's him, and he's like, yeah, like, F yeah,
And you don't even have the heart to be mad at him, right?
Yeah, I'm like, but he was so pumped up, and he was just so intense. But like after the game, and he would cool down, or before the game, just very, very calm, very chill. Such a good dude, good man.
Also, the best timeouts in Flyers history, if you ask me, for my money.
His usage was perfect. Yeah,
insane. Right. I would love to drop him in 1998 and just let him have a conversation with Andy Reid about when to call timeouts. It changed the course of the city, but
he wouldn't have had any for him to call.
Right.
He'd have wasted them.
Well, right. But I don't know about you, but I absolutely love the idea for this bracket. I think it's been a ton of fun. The conversation that this has been generating has been absolutely awesome. What's your favorite playoff series of all time? Like if you're going back, you mentioned you were watching YouTube highlights with your son. If you're going to sit him down and watch him one series, show him one series, games 1 through 5, 6, 7, whatever it is, what series are you showing him?
Well,
you know what? Let's say the last 20, 25 years.
Okay. Well,
cut it down a little bit.
Okay, so eliminate 8 years off that because they haven't won
right.
since 12.
Correct.
97. I mean, that was pretty special against Pittsburgh. That was the handing of the torch from Mario to Lindros.
That worked out.
Yeah, see, I have 2 different subsets to pull from here. the working subset or the before that and growing up as a fan. I mean, 87 was
I mean, have you shown him 04 against the Lightning yet?
Yeah, I mean,
oof.
That game 7, I didn't even see game 7 live.
That one hurt.
Yeah, I had to go camping with my wife in the middle of nowhere.
You missed out.
Yeah,
that one hurt.
Yeah, I mean, the Lightning go on and win the cup that year against Calgary, and Vinny fights
that Flyers team could have beat Calgary.
Yeah, I totally agree. And
that Flyers team was beating Calgary.
Yeah, and the thing is, God damn, was Primo good?
Yeah, he was.
He was so good in that playoffs. But I mean, that's a great one. I'm trying to. I mean, I would have to look back, and even though the Flyers lost to Edmonton in 87, I would probably say that because the level of hockey was so good on both sides. I mean, look, that 87 Oilers team was voted the greatest NHL team of all time.
Yep.
And you look at the players, I mentioned them earlier: Gretzky, Curry, Lowe, Charlie Huddy, Esa Tikkanen. I mean, it was Glenn Anderson. It was just so good, so deep. And Grant Fuhrer, by the way.
So that can be your pick from older than 25 years ago, because that's also not within the last 25 years.
Boy, wasn't there a good run in like 08? The conference final run was really good.
I think you're right. Yeah, because so you're just not going with anything from that 2010 run, Cinderella stories. Like you can just go with the Boston series.
But that wasn't a great series because the first half of it sucked.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
I mean, the 4 straight was great. And look, the other thing with that is too, like the series against the Devils wasn't great.
No,
it was a great result. The series against Montreal wasn't great. It was only 5 games.
The Flyers kind of dominated that series. Yeah.
Oh, they did. Yeah.
They by the time Montreal got there, they were gassed. They had run out of luck juice. They were done.
Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, you could look at the series against the Blackhawks in 2010, the final, but the result obviously is one thing, but that wasn't great hockey either. I mean, it was sloppy. I mean, look at this, the scores of some of those games. I mean, in Chicago, right. Niemi and Leighton couldn't stop a beach ball from the blue line. So
no, and the Flyers were just outmatched in that series. Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, as very, very young players, just at the absolute peak, buzzing around, and we just weren't ready. And they just had so much depth. Duncan Keith at his peak. That team was so good.
Oh yeah.
That team was so good. That's the team. Yeah. It's basically the same team that won 3 years later.
Yeah,
right.
Marion Hosse is on that team.
It's basically the exact same team that won again 3 years later. Like it's
2. Yeah, they won
2 years. I'm sorry.
They won on even numbered years.
You're right. Them LA were flip flopping.
Yep, LA was 11-13.
Okay.
Boy, and I love that LA team.
No, Boston won at 11, didn't they?
Oh yeah. LA was at 15 and wait. So LA was 13 13 and 15.
Oh, okay, you're right. And Chicago was 10, 12, 14.
14, yeah.
Right, they won their right. But yeah, that team that beat the Flyers was essentially the same team that won in the other 2 cups. Like they kept the band together for the most part.
Oh yeah, yep, absolutely.
And it worked for him. And that's one of the reasons I was so excited about the current Flyers team, because the current Flyers team was kind of set up to do the same thing. You look at Konechny as kind of they were set up in a similar fashion. I'm not saying they were on the same level, but
yeah, I'm trying to figure out who the Patrick Kane is.
Well, nobody on Patrick Kane's level. I'll give you
that. Yeah.
But I think it's a deeper team overall, because the fourth line of that Chicago team in 2010 was only okay. That's still when you had a fourth line, like an old school fourth line where a
bunch of slugs.
Right. What's not Brandon Bolig? I'm thinking of somebody specific from that team who was just a fourth liner and scored a couple of big goals and served that Robert Bortuzzo role from the Blues last year. And the Flyers don't really have that. So you kind of have 3 extra skill positions.
Sure. Yeah.
Now that in today's game, it lets you be a little deeper.
Yeah. That's the reason why the Flyers are having success, is because they can go a game without getting a point from their top 6 forwards and still win.
Yeah.
And score 4 or 5 goals. So.
Scott Lawton can just have a goal and 2 assists, just on any night.
Yeah, and then Raffle as well. I mean,
and I've been super impressed with Tyler Pitlick since he's been here. He's been. I don't think anybody has worked harder than he has since he's been here. He's been absolutely stellar to me.
He's the guy
in his role.
Does his job. Yep, does his job every night. And you're right, he works his bag off every night. And
he's a modern day fourth liner. He'll get you 25, 30 points a year. Sometimes he'll spike more. And if he gets you 45 points, you're not all that surprised by it. But he's a fourth line guy. He'll chew up some good, solid minutes. You can throw him on the penalty kill if you need him.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you got Nate Thompson and Derek Grant, but you're not going to.
And Derek Grant's been great too.
Yeah.
I'd love to see them sign Derek Grant. I don't know if they're going to, especially if the cap ends up staying flat like it looks like it's going to.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's going to cost you any money. He's making $700 this year, but I think if you got him for 1.2 AAV for 2 years, he would do it. But I think you have guys that can come up and fill that role. That's Morgan Frost role or roster spot, not the role, but
right.
And that drops somebody else into that position. So they got too many.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate re-signing Derek Grant so we don't have to use guys like Mikhail Vorobiev and Nico Bay-Kubel and these guys who kind of. You know what, I grew on him as time went on, but his first 5 or 6 games I was pretty unhappy.
He's adjusted very well though.
He did adjust well. I think the problem with him is that's all he's going to be. And I guess that's fine, but I think Derek Grant is a better 4C in 3 years than Nico Bay-Kubel is.
Grant is 29 years old too.
Yeah, but I mean, with limited minutes, he's putting less miles on his body. He's got plenty of time left. He hasn't really been asked to. And again, in that cultural change, fourth line guys aren't hitting 48 people a night and fighting 3 times a night anymore. Yeah. So like that fourth line minute is just reduced workload.
Yeah, I think Grant's only played 146 NHL games.
Okay.
In those years too. He's been on 7 different teams in 7 different seasons. I actually talked to him on Friday.
Okay.
He'll be on the episode tomorrow, Flyers Daily. And I asked him, I said, do you have all your jerseys hanging up yet? He goes, yeah, I probably won't even need to paint the walls. They'll all be covered because I got a jersey from every team.
Yeah, he is that journeyman, but I did like what I saw out of him. And I'm surprised we got him kind of as affordably as we did. Because I heard there were a couple teams kind of in the running.
Yeah, he's a good guy to grab for a playoff. From so's Nate, and Nate's a guy that gets traded every year at the deadline.
And I hope that playoff team. And I hope that they get a chance to show their mettle. I hope they get a chance because in the playoffs is where your depth shines. We saw it out of St. Louis last year. We saw it out of Washington the year before that. To win the cup, you need production from your bottom 6.
Yep.
In today's NHL, you just need it.
The biggest indicator of success because there's going to be nights when your top line is going to get shut down, especially in the playoffs, because the opposition's usually going to have a pretty good shutdown line to match.
Yep.
And here's the thing, though, too, is that the Flyers' top line always gets that duty of having to shut down the other team's top line, and
because it has Sean Couturier on it, right?
Yeah. And so much more often than not, they come out plus on that equation, whether that's going against Bergeron's line with Marchand and Pastrnak, or whether that's going against Ovi's line. Ovi didn't have a point against the Flyers this year.
No.
I mean, come on. I mean, that's ridiculous. It's
this team
ridiculous
good.
How good Couturier is, and there's still a portion of the fan base that hasn't paid close enough attention to realize that he's not a good hockey player. He's a great hockey player, and he's one of the elite players in the league.
And he's making 4.5,
4.25, yeah,
4.25.
3 more years. He's at the midway point of a 6-year deal. And here's
it's a top 5 contract in the league.
It might be number 1.
And Nathan McKinnon has something to say about that, but I'm with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. But the thing is with Couturier, he's such an understated guy that
he doesn't demand the attention.
Yeah, and you don't want it.
No, and I'm okay with it from a selfish perspective, right? Looking behind the numbers, just as a fan of the team, I'm okay with that because that might keep his next contract number down a little bit. If he wins the next 3 Selkies, like he very well might, and starts getting that national recognition and starts getting mentioned with, the Ryan O'Reillys and the Patrice Bergerons in terms of elite defensive guys, it'll make that next contract hurt a little more, especially when people point out to him how underpaid he's been.
Oh yeah, he knows it. And
I'm sure he does.
Yeah, he'll be 29 when his deal's up. So it's not like he's going to be old. And the way he played, look, he's already played almost, I think, 700 games.
He's going to cash in.
Oh, yeah, he can get paid.
I think he knows
8 years and $80 million.
I think that's probably about right.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that we are in a position where we can be the team who gives it to him, because I believe he does deserve it.
Oh, they won't let him go anywhere.
Right. Well, good. I hope that's the case. The cap has become a snafu for a couple of years now because of this whole virus thing.
Yeah.
And we'll see how that has to work out. But I think he's one of those guys you move mountains to keep. You trade a lot of pieces to keep Sean Couturier.
Yep. You're dying to pay guys like that. He's a coach's dream.
And I think, I don't know if you've thought at all about this, but looking at this Flyers team, when eventually the day comes where Claude Giroux moves on, I think Sean Couturier is a really good case to take the C from him. And I don't know what goes on in the room, and I know that changes dynamics.
He's a quiet guy.
Okay.
He's a leader, no doubt, but he doesn't say much. And
so it's going to be Kevin Hayes. Got it. Okay.
Well, I mean, if it goes by that,
no, I know.
If it goes by some talking. Look, not all captains are guys that are very vocal, and it's just that when they're vocal, it's really got some power behind it because they don't say a lot.
Sure, but Sid doesn't say much. I'm sure
he could be, but I think more like don't discount a guy like Konechny being a captain. He was a captain at every level prior.
I've actually thought about him too.
Yeah,
because he has the personality to kind of be a leader and be a magnetic force. I can see a team rallying around him.
Yeah, don't forget about a guy like Provorov too. Just because he's
again
Russian.
Understated leadership. I'm confident he'll wear at least an A as soon as one becomes available.
Yeah, no doubt.
As soon as one becomes available, as soon as somebody moves on, I think Provorov's probably next in line.
Yeah, I agree with that. Plus, you want to have a defenseman with a ladder too.
Yeah, and the moment for me was that Pittsburgh series a couple of years ago. Even though they lost the series,
shoulder hanging off.
Not even that. It was the fact that he was crying in his locker cleanout interview, his postseason interview, and it wasn't because he was in pain, man. It's because he was disappointed he didn't do better.
Yeah, and he was
that's insane.
Look, he couldn't even lift his arm. But you know what's funny about that? A week and a half later, he was on the ice.
I'm surprised it took that long. Did somebody physically restrain him?
Yeah. Crazy.
And we have gone this far into this conversation about this Flyers team, and we haven't mentioned Carter Hart. And when's the last time you went this long into a Flyers conversation without mentioning goaltending? Because it always comes up. It always comes up.
Especially in my world.
Right.
Yeah, the kid's so good.
He's so good.
Levels. Yeah. And I think that, like, you watch him, I'm trying to help, like, kind of let people understand why he plays the way he plays. For me, and watching him, and his technical abilities are so good, and he's so smooth, no wasted movements, play reading off the charts, 21-year-old goalie. His mental game, he's been working with a sports psychologist since he was 12 years old, a guy
forever,
who works with Braden Holtby and other NHL goalies. All those things off the charts. And when you watch him, too, a lot of times people go, well, he doesn't seem that it's spectacular to me because he makes a lot of saves on the logo.
Yep.
Well, why is it? Because he's in the right spot.
He's so intelligent. Yeah,
he doesn't give himself self-inflicted wounds where he's got to travel far and go into desperation mode to make saves. So, he's got every element.
And then at the same time, he's also proven that he can make the desperation saves. Like you see the 5-on-3 save against Taylor Hall, and he's made saves like that. Look routine. It's crazy. He almost caught that puck. He didn't just deflect it.
Yeah,
he almost gloved it.
There's one against Panarin too.
I know the one.
Yeah, and there's a behind the back pass, and he goes over and he goes into what it's called a spread save selection, where you're kind of falling forward and everything's coming like that, and he just hits off the paddle of his stick, but that spread move is actually something that has technical aspects to it. And,
it gets him in the spot to make as many saves as possible.
Yeah.
And he's been absolutely incredible. Is this the most stable the Flyers goaltending position has been since Ron Hextall was playing a billion games a year?
Probably. It's
Steve Mason, Michael Neuwirth wasn't terrible for a couple of years, I guess.
Yeah, Mace was good. I mean, you look at that series in 2014 against the Rangers. I mean, at the Game 7, they lost 1-0. He was great. But yeah, probably the combination of stable and good. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Because they were stable and just poor for a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, it might be legitimately the most exciting time to be a Flyers fan, because even that 2010 run was lightning in a bottle. And part of the Holmgren era, to me, while he was spending a whole bunch of money on free agents, was that nothing ever felt sustainable. Every run was, let's try this year. Okay, let's try this year. Okay, let's try this year. And part of what we saw with Hextall as the GM, say what you want about him, for better or for worse, he set this team up to be good for a long time. This team has good vets with time still left on their career. You have a whole bunch of good mid-aged guys, and then your prospects are through the roof. I think Joel Farabee is going to be a 30-goal scorer in this league. Lock it up at some point in his career.
Too, yeah, I think
right.
He and Frost will.
Yeah, you have Travis. You have Travis Konechny. By the way, Nolan Patrick didn't play a game this year. We're still hoping that he turns things around. Oscar Lindblom has been gone since mid-November, December. Hopefully he's doing well. Knock on wood. We think we're still thinking about him, but this team from January to the stoppage in March was one of the best teams in hockey, and you're missing 2 of your pieces under 23 years old.
Yeah.
It's crazy how good this team could have been this year.
Yeah, and still was.
And they were still really very good, right?
Yeah.
I think this team was making a run. I called it on this show in late October that I thought this team was making the Eastern Conference Finals. If I had called into one of your radio shows in October and said that to you, what would you have said to me? What would your response have been if I said in October they're making the Eastern Conference Finals?
I would have said that there's a chance that could happen, because in the NHL, if
once you make
it, well, and if you come into the playoffs playing well, and you are healthy and you're playing good hockey and you're getting good goaltending and you get a couple of bounces, it can happen. I mean, look at 2010, like we talked about. The Flyers were the 7th seed; they had home ice advantage over an 8 seed.
Wild.
Yeah, I mean, and the Caps were one of the greatest regular season teams in the league's history that year, and Flyers still ended up with home ice. So, at that time when I was on the radio, I was telling people that, hey, it's not going to look like great in the beginning of the year. It's going to be an adjustment to a new system. The system's very similar to what Hack ran, but there's intricacies to it that Vigneault wants, especially in the D zone and a little bit in the neutral zone, that they had to change, and getting guys on the right side of the puck and young players in the right positions defensively, when to fly, when not to fly. So you knew there was going to be a little bit of growing pain there, and you knew there was going to be a lot of adjusting, guys playing with different guys. You saw Vigneault changing those lines because he's going, okay.
He was tweaking them every couple of days. Yep.
Yeah. Who can play the way I want them to play, and who do they need to play with for me to get the most out of them? So that's what that was. And that's why after October and into November, you saw things steamroll in a great direction.
Yeah, you definitely saw things start to click for stretches of time. That Lindblom, JVR, who was playing center, that line was together for a couple of weeks before Oscar left the team, and they were really clicking.
Yeah.
And then they move on, and he puts Konechny up with Voracek and Giroux, and that starts, or with Couturier and Giroux, I'm sorry, and that starts working. And he did a good job throughout the year. He's like, okay, you saw him find a line, go, okay, that works, and then kind of put it away.
Yeah.
He's going to come back to it. Okay, all right, if I need it late in the game, I can throw out Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, Travis Konechny, and they're going to generate some offense for me.
Well, yeah, what he looks for there, too, is you look for pairings. Even though forward lines are 3 guys, you look for pairings. Go, okay, this guy and this guy, okay, now they're great together. They generate, and they're both good offensively, defensively. Here's where I don't like where they are. So who's the third guy to maybe, if I don't like the way they are in the neutral zone, I need a guy that's going to help in the neutral zone. Maybe that's JVR. Right. Who's a good neutral zone player, or has turned into a really good neutral zone.
Yeah, he has.
So you look at those things, you find those pairings, and then you find the accoutrement.
Yeah. And we've definitely seen Alain Vigneault playing with that all year. And He's not afraid to mix things up mid-game, mid-period. He'll mix up the lines and try something. And he's not afraid to throw somebody new on the power play and give them a chance. And we saw that out of him, and we saw it to great effect. A lot of these guys, when they got a chance, played well with it.
Yep, absolutely. Albe Kubel was on the power play. Yep. It was being productive. So absolutely.
Yeah, and we see that kind of thing, and I think he was getting a little bit of mention, but I believe that Elian Vino should have been heavily in the conversation for the Jack Adams. And I think if the Flyers ended up, if the Flyers end up first place in the Metro, however that works, either through a rollback or more games or whatever it is, I think he deserves a conversation there. Because
I think he's the finalist.
Yeah, because he maximized this team's effort and potential and ability in a way that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Yeah, I think the top 4 guys are Vigneault's one of them. I think that Torts is going to be one of them. Berube could be one of them, and I'd probably look at Jared Bednar.
What's his face in Pittsburgh is going to be up there too.
Oh yeah, Sullivan.
Yeah, I don't like it, but he's going to be there just because of how they played when Sid was out.
And when Malkin was out.
He's made mountains out of molehills for sure.
Yeah. He's
in terms of player quality. And I hate to say it, but...
And no Gensel, by the way.
Yeah. Who, for some reason, is a 40-goal scorer. I don't understand, but turns out playing with Sidney Crosby's pretty good.
Yeah, but look at his numbers. They're actually a tick up when he's not playing with Sid. Crazy. Wow.
It's unreal. But yeah, I did enjoy the edit. I don't know if you watched the Stadium Series mic'd up special that the NHL Network put out, but I did enjoy the edit because, man, Sullivan looked whiny.
Oh yeah,
it was great. He's my favorite. He's out there after the Dumoulin hit. Simmons is in the box. After that period, they come back out for the second and they show him talking to the ref. He's going, "Oh, I'm missing 2 of my guys, and he didn't get anything, and I'm down my 2 best defensemen for the end of the rest of the game." And the ref looks at him and goes, "Is there a question there?"
Yeah.
He goes, "No." And the ref goes, "All right," and skates away.
Yeah.
It's great. It just makes him look terrible.
Yeah.
And I love to say it because the Flyers won that game. And, that game is in the second round.
Yeah.
Swinging all the way back to this bracket, that game is in the second round in controversial fashion. And they're going to get steamrolled because they're up against the Flyers winning the Stanley Cup against the Boston Bruins. So,
and rightfully so.
I can't wait for Mike Sr., our other host here. I can't wait for him to freak out when the Stadium Series gets any votes, because somebody's going to vote for it.
Well, yeah,
and Mike Sr. is going to lose his mind, and I can't wait. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
But I'm actually going to let you get out of here, Jason. But before I do that, make sure, everybody, to go follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast to find this bracket. The second round should start tonight. Next week, I will be back with Mike Sr. and Kevin to do our Final Four show, just like we did for Greatest Players. We'll be back for that. Make sure to follow us there. We are also on Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, sportstalkphilly.com. We're everywhere. Jason, you want to tell the people where to find you, what you're doing? You were back on the radio yesterday. How was that?
It was good. It was. It's been a long time, but it was like riding a bike. But no, you can check out my stuff. The Stick to Hockey podcast. You can follow it on Twitter at Stick to Hockey Pod, and it's on all the iTunes and all those different areas to check out. Also, we're doing YouTube now as well. We just had Craig Berube and Keith Jones on this past week, and then Brian Boucher on video breaking out old masks in the prior episode. So you can see that on YouTube at Stick to Hockey Pod. Also, Flyers Daily and Flyers Fix I do for the Flyers, and that's for the Flyers Broadcast Network.
If you guys are hiring, by the way.
I don't know who's hiring these days.
I don't think anybody is these days.
But hopefully the game gets back on the ice, and I'm still doing Flyers Daily every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So tomorrow on Monday, Derek Grant will be on the episode, and we have a bunch of stuff. Elaine Vigneault is going to be coming on this week, which is great. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I imagine that most of our listener base probably knows who you are at this point. And what's your Twitter, just in case anybody doesn't?
At Jason Myrt, JasonMyrt.
There you go. And you guys can find him there, and you can find us at YWT Podcast. Until then, I have no idea how to sign off on video. This is weird for me. I didn't think this far ahead.
Same way you do on audio.
I suppose you're right. Well, until next week, we will see you guys. And I don't really have a good sign off, and I'm nervous, so we're getting out of here.
See you later.
See ya.